Thank you, Chairman and members. I present to you today Senate Bill 901, which will allow the people of California to vote once again on the proposed high-speed rail project. Much has changed since Californians voted on this issue in 2008, and they deserve the right to vote on whether billions of dollars of government debt should be incurred knowing what we know now. In 2008, the voters were told that the cost of the project was estimated at $35 billion. But now, that cost has escalated between somewhere of $60 billion and $100 billion. Some have suggested even much more. In 2008, the voters were told that the bullet train would make a trip between LA and San Francisco in 2 hours and 40 minutes. We now know that this is completely false and will be closer to 4 hours. In 2008, the voters were told that this train would sustain 220 miles per hour through the entire trip. But we now learn that the train speeds will be substantially reduced on key areas of track, and thus passenger travel will be much longer. In 2008, the voters were told that the cost of trip between LA and San Francisco would be around $50 a ticket. But we also know that's wrong now, and projected fares are well over $100 a ticket. In 2008, the voters were told that the train would utilize existing corridors. We now see in recently adopted maps that this train is not going down existing corridors and instead cutting through current businesses, homes, and family farms. We have people today in my district who are being told that they will lose their jobs, their farms, their homes, their small businesses because this runaway train will tear right through the middle of their properties. We also had a Superior Court judge rule in August of last year that the High-Speed Rail Authority has, I quote, abused its discretion by continually failing to comply with financial and environmental requirements approved by the voters in 2008. A September 2013 USC LA Times poll found that 70% of those surveyed support being provided the ability to re-vote on high-speed rail. It's time to stop this reckless and irresponsible high-speed rail project by letting the people, knowing what they know now, vote again. And rather than spend $3 billion in taxpayers' money to build the first segment of this mismanaged train project, I mean, why not in the Central Valley? Let's redirect and invest that money in more efficient and a productive manner that actually helps people. In my very poor Central Valley Senate district, there are too many people who must drink bottled water because the water is so inferior. Let's build new water delivery projects that will provide a reliable supply of clean water for not only these families, but for our agricultural industry. Let's create thousands of new jobs by funding more career and technical and educational programs. But what we shouldn't do is waste taxpayer dollars on a project that makes no sense at all. SB 901 simply stops the spending of rail project monies until the people vote on whether billions of dollars of their taxes should be spent on an ill-conceived high-speed rail project that does not meet the legal requirements passed in 2008. With me today is Michael Corbett of Kings County, who is a co-sponsor of this bill, Frank Calavera, who is the Vice Chair of Citizens California for California High-Speed Rail Accountability, and William Grinley.
Thank you all. Where would you like to begin? I'd like to keep your comments about 3 minutes. We have a very busy hearing, so if you could do that, I'd appreciate it.
I can certainly abide by that, Mr. Chair.
Less is better.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Michael Corbett, representing the Kings County Board of Supervisors, the plaintiffs in the lawsuit that's currently pending before the courts. Kings County Board of Supervisors believes that SB 901 is totally appropriate given the changes in cost parameters, time parameters, and the project parameters related to high-speed rail. We also think it's appropriate given the waning support amongst Californians for the high-speed rail project. We think that it would be more pertinent to simply forestall going ahead with the project that is currently envisioned, because we don't really know if the project is going to be completed in a timely manner. We certainly know it will not be completed within the cost parameters that were previously laid out, and we don't know the extent to which it will be able to deliver the services to Californians that it promised. More specifically, we do not believe that it's going to be able to make stops in the Central Valley and then get to San Francisco from LA in a timely manner, meaning that people in the Central Valley will have voted for a high-speed rail which will be underutilized by them because of their inability to board. So for those reasons, we strongly support SB 901 and ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Corbett. Who's next?
I'll go. I thank the Transportation Committee for the opportunity to address the very important issue of California high-speed rail, which Dan Walters has stated is the largest state public works project in U.S. history. My name is Ron Jones, and as Vice President of the Train Riders Association of California, we are committed to creating the best passenger rail system possible for California and are concerned how the California high-speed rail plan is proceeding. But today I'm not here representing TRAC. But as a lifelong resident of California, I wish to commend Senator Vidak for representing the will of the overwhelmingly majority of the voters of California who have expressed in polls that they want to have a voice in this completely revised plan. This shows they are following this issue and they do not wish to spend any more funds until they have their say. For all the reasons that have been stated already, I believe Prop 1A funds should not be spent on this project. I also wish to express the opinion that the cap-and-trade funds, according to their own legal guidelines, could not be used. And given all the projects which could benefit the important goals of cap-and-trade, which I was fortunate enough to be at the Transform Summit this morning, and know that all those folks will be visiting you tomorrow expressing all their important issues, that the present California high-speed rail plan will actually increase greenhouse gas emissions and would require mitigation. That is also not in the best interest of all Californians. As representatives of California, your responsibility is very clear to me. You all have copies of TRAC's Plan B, their alternative to the present plan. You all have a choice. California will be watching. But I do really appreciate the opportunity to speak today. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you again for the opportunity. Your predecessor, Joe Simitian, used to say that state your thesis first and then get on with it grandly. So let me tell you my thesis today is you have a very simple choice to make. You can either have your choo-choo train, Governor, or you can obey the laws of the state. Before you are three documents. The first of those, called Plus ça change, c'est la même chose, says that the business plan that the authority has just adopted is just more of the same, sugar-coated nothingness. It has misrepresentations. It has misleading statements. The second of those documents, actually I presented on March 27th. It's called If You Build It, They Will Not Come. It shows that for at least the first 7 years of the High-Speed Rail Authority's introduction of high-speed rail into California, they are offering a product which does not compete in either time or cost with driving or flying. And the third of those documents, all 95 pages of it, is why cap-and-trade cannot be used to support the high-speed train. Both legally and financially, it's a folly. Let me touch on the first of those. There are at least three statements in page 3 of my handout to you that show where, once again, the authority totally ignores the laws which should be governing them. They not only recognize that they need an operating subsidy during the first years of it, but they put a price tag on it. That's entry-level price tag, folks. Secondly, they admit that they will not even complete the high-speed rail's initial operating segment before 2020, which is required in the law. Only the IOS will be completed, in their words, by 2022. Third, they keep talking about, well, we're going to go at speeds of 220 miles an hour, but they're fudged, and now that is 200 miles an hour. It is your duty to not only pass laws, but to make sure the agencies of this government obey them. The second document, If You Build, They Will Not Come, shows in detail how long it takes to get from a suburb of Los Angeles, Norwalk, to Berkeley, as opposed to driving, as opposed to flying. If you were to take the train between 2022 and 2026, when only the section from Sylmar to Madera is open, it would take you 8 hours, 37 minutes. You can drive it in 6. All right? It will cost you $107. You can drive that for $58, or total cost on their figures is $98. I know no better way, because I come from Silicon Valley, to destroy a brand by introducing an inferior product. The third, the compendium of why you can't use high-speed rail, the authority says the 300 miles will not be finished by 2022, which makes it illegal under the AB 32 cap-and-trade funds, because the Air Resources Board says they're supposed to be helping make the goals by 2020. I won't go through what the 4 papers say, but think of this. at the present cost in flat Central Valley land is $93 million a mile. So even if they're able to get $1 billion a year out of whatever bill emerges in the hidden nights of July of this year, right? If they get $1 billion a year, they can only go about 12 miles. Taking that calculation and putting it together, you come up with completing only the IOS, that is the first 300 of 520 miles, in the next 80 years. How does California squander these hundreds of millions of dollars? As has already been said by Senator Vidak, here it is right here before you. Here is what was promised. Here is what is now being done. There is no resemblance. The next 4 of those slides show the facts of there is no 2-hour and 40-minute that can be completed. This one shows you what worldwide experiences are on the actual cost per passenger mile. The authority's charges are about half to a quarter of that, and the same thing for the operating costs. The final one shows you we have again and again and again requested of the High-Speed Rail Authority that they provide us information on operating costs. They not only turned us down, we're nothing but citizens, they turned down the Government Accountability Office of the United States. Transparency is not the nickname. Finally, profitability is a claim that the Europeans might make, but the 3 silos on this page show that the Europeans have 3 different accounting systems. In the United States, the DOT, Department of Transportation, only allows you to put it all, revenues and all expenditures, in one pot. Let me close by reading to you from a former member of this august body. News that the Transbay Terminal is something like $300 million over budget should not come as a surprise to anyone. We always knew that the initial estimate was way under the real cost, just like we never had the real cost for the Central Subway or the Bay Bridge or any other massive construction project. So get off of it. In the world of civic projects, the first budget is really just a down payment. If people knew the real cost from the start, nothing would ever get approved. So the idea is get going, start digging a hole, make it so big that there's no alternative except to fill it. That's Willie Brown telling it like it was last July 28th. And instead of going to jail, Willie got the bridge named after him. So I question you, is high-speed rail just another case of this is the way it is? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Greenlee. Always very informative.
Frank Oliveira, Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability. We support Senate Bill 901. In 2008, the California High-Speed Train Project was defined by the California Assembly Bill 3034 and the resulting Proposition 1A, and finally by Streets and Highway Code 2704. Proposition 1A was approved by the voters of California. Proposition 1A promised the voters of California, among other things, an 800-mile high-speed train system spanning between San Francisco, Sacramento, and San Diego. A price tag of $33 to $45 billion, $10 billion from the proposition matched by federal and private funds. Project that followed transportation corridors such as State Route 99, Interstate 5, environmentally responsible electric 220-mile-per-hour train. A project that would proceed only as usable segments could be completed in phases, but realistic operational phases. Defined travel times between specific points, no operating subsidies, a self-supporting operation, a one-seat ride, reasonable ticket prices, ongoing oversight to ensure that these milestones would be met, procedural checks and balances to ensure that the oversight was in place. It is now 2014, 6 years later, after the passage of Proposition 1A. None of these points have been achieved or are achievable by the California High-Speed Rail Authority's plans given their funding situation. The authority rarely speaks of an 800-mile system anymore. Frankly, they rarely speak about a system that extends north beyond Madera anymore, or anything south of Corcoran. Wasco is no longer achievable. The current design is less than 100 miles of non-electrified track that might be used by diesel-powered trains. The reality is that even this is unachievable because of the funding shortfalls. Despite these failures, the authority is quick to point out that it is spending Proposition 1A money on non-high-speed passenger rail on the San Francisco Peninsula and in the Los Angeles Basin. Interesting, but still still another violation of Proposition 1A, which will soon play out in another courtroom. Early high-speed rail investments in the endpoints south and northwest, they say, reality translates into stranded high-speed expenditures that cannot be connected without an additional $90 billion. In other mega infrastructure projects, if other mega infrastructure projects are an example, completion costs for the project will exceed $300 billion. Has the authority ever admitted that? Reality can be cruel sometimes. Court challenges have put the remaining Proposition 1A bond funding in limbo. What is left of the $10 billion in Proposition 1A bonds may never be available to anyone for any purpose. The Superior Court has found that the authority has failed to do its due diligence in their compliance with the proposition. More court action is forthcoming. In the meantime, the authority is offering bottom dollar to property owners within its proposed right-of-way and is seizing land in Fresno County through eminent domain. The authority and the State Public Works Board have been denying landowners their due process and have been obligating unidentified state funds by continuing forward. Continued forward by spending only federal American Reinvestment and Recovery Act funding without a state match as required by the ERIC grant agreement. More legal challenges are forthcoming. What state budgets will the ERIC match come from? The general fund, maybe? Education, maybe? Maybe law enforcement? How will that affect the taxpayers of California? Will they get an unfinished pile of dirt in the Central Valley for their losses? Does any of this sound like what the November 2008 voters pamphlet said would happen? No, it does not. Is this what the public agreed to when they passed Proposition 1A? No, it is not. Now, to somehow save this doomed, poorly planned project, Assembly Bill 32, greenhouse gas revenues are being considered to fund the project. Really? Is that what AB 32 was intended to do with the revenues? To fund a project that will just add to the pollution of the Central Valley and the Los Angeles Basin until sometime after 2028. Best case, 2028? What an irony when today's Earth Day. This silliness needs to stop. The greenhouse gas revenues can be put to better
Oliver,
use.
if you could wrap up, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Send SB 901 forward. Trust your constituents. Trust the taxpayers. Send this back to the voters so that they can either legitimize this project or they can send it away. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt. Mr. Wolf?
Mr. Chairman, members, David Wolf here with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. We're in support of this bill. And not to belabor the point, but let's make something very, very clear here. What did voters vote for when they voted on Proposition 1A back in 2008? They didn't vote for a blended system. They voted for a full, comprehensive rail system down to Southern California in a trip that took 3 hours or less. And with trains that went, somewhere in the neighborhood of over 200 miles an hour. And that's not what they're getting with this system. And because of that, it should go back on the ballot for voters to consider, as 70% of voters seem certainly to want. And one other point that I want to make, members, is just, and it's a point that hasn't really been made yet today, is just the prioritization of bond debt. We have a number of different projects out there for consideration. Obviously, the author, I think, would like a water bond, as would many members of this legislature. And, reverting high-speed rail money to water bond is a consideration. The chairman of this committee has a library bond that I think he might like to see go forward, and we can certainly reauthorize some of the money from high-speed rail to that priority potentially as well. Because let's be honest, we have a debt service ratio in the state of California of over 6%. That means, about $6 billion of general fund money every year goes off towards paying nothing but bond debt. Now, it can be debated whether that number is too high or too low, but the fact remains there are crucial, important infrastructure projects that need to be funded in this state, and don't think high-speed rail is one of them. Would ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. I look forward to your support on my bond bill. Any other witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? If we could make some space for the opposition, gentlemen, that would be appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Keith Dunn here on behalf of the Association for California High-Speed Trains. It's truly a pleasure to be before you again to talk about high-speed rail. I would like to point out, I hear a lot of talk about polls and what polls say, and I, for one, and I think you'd all would agree, I'm glad that we don't govern by polls. Polls are just what they are. They're a snapshot in time. We had an election. The voters voted for high-speed rail. I hear a lot of discussion about the fact that it's not yet delivering on what specifically was outlined in the initiative, and that's correct. You build a railroad one spike at a time. You have to start building it to get to the completion. We're in that process. There is a very aggressive oversight. There's legal challenges. Those decisions will be played out in the courts, and we'll see what the justices all decide as far as the validity of the plan that not only was approved by the voters, but also by this body here in the legislature. We talk about high-speed rail with regards to cap and trade and the validity of those dollars to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I, too, have seen numerous studies that talk about the reductions and benefits that will be received from using those revenues to reduce the greenhouse gas footprint here in our state. The Air Resources Board has done quite a bit of study on that fact. So I'd just like to say that we have had a vote. We've seen polls, but we've actually had a vote, and the voters of California decided they would like to see this project. There's been lots of talk about having them re-vote, but no one has yet been able to put that forward and find the support to put that forward. So we have had a vote, and we're going to move forward and build this project. And I ask for your no vote.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members, Cesar Diaz on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council. Our council represents approximately 400,000 men and women in the construction trades, many of them living in in the Central Valley where this project will be first started. In that particular area, there has been a lot of unemployment. Many people have suffered. Many people have lost their homes in addition because of the Great Recession. And this project is a catalyst for not only economic development, but for the only opportunity they may have to actually be employed. Also, there will be further development along the corridor where homes will be developed, businesses will thrive, and then there will be a mobility system for them to actually be transported up and down the Central Valley through this system. The truth of the matter is that our state continuously needs transportation funds, and we need to modernize our transportation system. This is a project that achieves that. The legislature, your committee, and others have looked at this project, have made significant improvements to the business plan. The business plan continues to be improved. We believe that the current authority is in place, that's in place now, has made significant changes to improve the project. And the fact that you can reauthorize or redirect existing bond authority when the voters have already approved this project, I think is irresponsible. I think that we are not telling voters the truth. We need water, we need transportation system, we need school bonds, we need library bonds, and our state is not investing in them, and they're actually having to borrow through general obligation bonds to actually achieve that. The more we wait through deferred maintenance, the worse this problem gets. I know we have 4 bills that we have to talk about here, but if we're looking at polls, I mean, polls say so many different things. Some of the voters are saying that they should reform Prop 13, but I don't see any of the organizations here saying that since the voters are reforming or into reforming Prop 13 that we should do that. So I think for those reasons we're strongly opposed.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz.
Mr. Chairman, Member Scott Witch, on behalf of the State Association of Electrical Workers, the California Coalition of Utility Employees, the California State Pipe Trades Council, the Western States Council of Sheet Metal Workers, and the Elevator Constructors Union, are opposed to this bill and the other 3 bills. There's never been a significant infrastructure project in the history of the state of California that did not face opposition from naysayers and NIMBYs, from the Shasta Dam to the State Water Project that provides such critical water to the authors' district, to BART, to any number of major bridges. Every major infrastructure project has faced this type of opposition. It's time to move forward, and we would urge that the bill be defeated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Witch.
Mr. Chair, members, Sarah Flocks, the California Labor Federation. We are once here in opposition to all four of these bills and in support of the high-speed rail project. We do appreciate the concern of some of the speakers here and the author for protecting taxpayer dollars. We share that concern. We'd like to raise the issue of what happens if we don't build high-speed rail. High-speed rail is designed to modernize our transportation system to meet the needs of our growing population. The cost to taxpayers, some estimates put if we don't build high-speed rail, is that we're going to spend $150 billion to meet the needs of transportation. That means 4,300 new highway lanes, numerous new airports, and gates at airports. High-speed rail is a way to modernize our system to meet the needs of our growing population and also to protect the environment. So we support the project and oppose this and the other three bills. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Gus Corey here on behalf of the San Mateo County Transportation Authority. I want to apologize to the senator for not having a letter on file. It didn't quite make the deadline. But San Mateo County is pretty much built out. So we don't have the ability to increase our capacity on the state highway system. So investments into high-speed rail are going to ease traffic congestion. For the reasons stated by previous speakers, I ask that you oppose the measure. We'd like to work with the senator's office to further educate him on the benefits of high-speed rail. Thank you.
Good luck with that one.
Mr. Chairman, member Shane Gusman on behalf of the Teamsters and the Machinists Union oppose the bill.
Catherine Phillips with Sierra Club, California. We supported Prop 1A, which provided the initial funding for the high-speed rail. We have been critical of the current project for various and sundry reasons, but we do not believe that this bill or 902 or 903 are the way to respond to the problems of the High-Speed Rail Authority. We think that existing law and also some existing court challenges that would try to improve the elements of the high-speed rail are a better route. So we oppose this in the other 902 and 903. Thanks.
Mike Robeson on behalf of Caltrain and San Mateo Transit District in opposition. Thanks.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Senator Lara?
I actually had a question for Catherine from Sierra Club, if she can come back up. There was a discussion from the opposition or the supporters of this bill about GHG and the fact that, or it was being said that the train's actually going to increase GHG levels. Now we know that through the CalEnviro that have ID'd the Central Valley as one of the areas that is heavily impacted by, methane, black carbon, soot, NOx, SOx, you name it, that really impact the quality of life and the quality of the environment in the Central Valley. Now, I wanted to get your opinion on that statement. Do you believe that the high-speed rail actually is going to increase GHG levels in the Central Valley?
The greenhouse gas emissions change over time depending on what period you're looking at in the high-speed rail system. During construction, the High-Speed Rail Authority's own analysis done by an independent consultant and some of their EIR stuff indicates that criteria pollution and GHG, sometimes they're the same thing, will increase at certain points during construction. And they are looking for ways to mitigate that. Additionally, over time, it will take a while for high-speed rail to net out so that it is producing net GHG benefit. And that could be a period of decades. So there's a really strong temporal element here, and that is, do you invest funds now to ensure that later you have a robust transportation system that includes this, accepting that there are going to be some blips up, some increases in GHG that may be able to be mitigated. And then that all gets back to the cap and trade issue that you've heard me discuss before. That's why the Sierra Club's position is kind of complicated. We support high-speed rail. We don't support using cap and trade funds for those elements of the high-speed rail system that won't provide near-term emissions reduction. Some of those elements, what they are calling the bookends, are expected to provide improvements in the near term. The big piece that's in the middle, going from Fresno to south of there, that's where the mushiness comes in.
Thank you. Appreciate your response.
That's a technical term.
Yes.
Anyone else? Senator Galgiani, the author of the bill.
I have a couple of questions for you. First of all, we drive the same Highway 99 to get into the Capitol each week, to and from, and we go through a lot of construction and have for well over a year. Do you have any idea what the cost was for those improvements on Highway 99 that we're seeing now, that we're driving through every day, and where they came from?
No, ma'am.
Most people don't, and this is my point, that the high-speed rail bond had more accountability than any other bond measure ever in the history of the state of California. We know what it's going to cost. We know when it's supposed to come online. We know every detail, and the law was written that way, not to be able to find a way to take it apart and destroy it, but rather to give the legislature the ability to have constant oversight, not just before the project passed, but throughout the life of the entire project, unlike any other part of our transportation system. The answer to the question I asked is $1 billion, and the only reason I know that is because as a staff person, I worked on the implementing legislation for Prop 1B in 2006. Now, mind you, that was 8 years ago that we passed that bond measure. We didn't pass the high-speed rail bond measure until 2008. We are just now today seeing some of the improvements on Highway 99 from Prop 1B. The other question that I have for you, the last time you flew to Los Angeles, how long was the flight time?
I don't fly to Los Angeles.
Certainly you've flown at least once.
I don't. I drive.
Senator Lara, what's the flight time from here to Los Angeles?
The total number of hours to get from 3.5
just
3 hours.
Being on the plane and then getting off the plane, the exact flight time itself.
Oh Jesus, I don't know, like.
See, we don't know. That's the point. It changes from time to time, and that's my point. You were critical of the fact that you're saying that it's going to take more than 2 hours and 40 minutes. I knew when I crafted the legislation that we could not pinpoint an exact time on the exact minutes. Well, no one here in this room can probably tell exactly what the flight time is from here to Los Angeles. We know it's a little over an hour, but most people have no idea the exact time. The bill is written, AB 3034. The exact language that I have, since we're being exact here, is the high-speed rail system to be constructed pursuant to this chapter shall be designed to achieve the following characteristics. And then it goes on to outline what the times are. That's because we wanted to give voters the sense that it wasn't going to take 5 hours or even 4 hours. It was going to be about 2 hours and 40 minutes. It would be designed to achieve those characteristics. Next, you made the argument that it was going to run 220 miles per hour all along the whole system. Not true at all. Not true at all. Voters were given the business plan of 2008. I have it right here before me, and I can show it to you, where the speeds are outlined by segments, and they're coordinated. And everything in green is from 100 to 150 miles per hour, and that would be in the Bay Area, and that would be in Southern California. Then there's the segments in blue that would be between 150 and 200 miles, and then the segments in purple that are over 200 miles per hour. That's because we can't possibly predict every single minute detail about the system in advance of gaining the money and having the studies and doing all of the necessary work. The next thing that you talked about was the cost for the ticket. In 2008, in the business plan, they did a study with looking at a forecast of what it would be and what revenue could come in if they were looking at having it be the cost of about half of the cost of an airline ticket. That's where you got the $50 figure from LA to San Francisco. At that time, in those days, a round-trip flight round trip was around $200. In later years, they looked at other different scoring to see what it would be if perhaps they were to look at having it cost about two-thirds of an airline ticket price. There's a variable in there, and at the appropriate time, the High-Speed Rail Authority will make decisions about what the cost of a ticket will be to ride the system. Also, you made reference to the fact that it's illegal, Prop 1, that what we're planning now is illegal with reference to Prop 1A because you say it has to be done by 2020. That's not so. The business plan, again, that was presented to the voters in 2008, page 5, in case you're interested, says the authority assumes that the full high-speed train system will be in place by 2030. There's nothing in the bill itself that says it will be 2030 or 2020 or any time because we didn't know. We couldn't possibly know. Just as we couldn't possibly know when all of the improvements would be to our full highway system. Finally, what I would like to say, 2 points. One is that the first segment that went under contract is actually it's under budget, not over budget. We assumed it would be about $1.5 billion for the first contract that was let, and it's under $1 billion. Last but not least, I envy you with all my ability to envy that your district got the first set of money and mine did not. When we were competing for the monies, I at the time represented Merced County in the Assembly. We had worked since 2001 with a committee in place, representatives from all over the district. And when we had troubles with the thought of and the discussion of going through farmland, and when farmers started getting those notices in their mail that the authority was going to come onto their premises and they wanted to assess the property, it was before my election, and you can imagine my voters were very, very unhappy with me. But we stuck to it, and I did my job as a legislator, and I actually worked with my constituents, and we came up with an alignment that worked for the community. And we were ready, and we had people on board, and we were advocating to have the money come from Merced to Fresno. It has taken every bit of restraint on my part not to do a bill to take your money and give it to the people who actually want the money so bad and are ready to use it. We have had an EIR in place since May of 2012. The city of Palmdale, they were threatening to sue when the authority was talking about not coming through Palmdale. There are places in this state where people want the system so bad, and I am sorry that other legislators and yourself have not done what I believe might have been able to be done to bring your community together to inform the authority of what works for you and what doesn't work for you, as we were able to do in Merced County, and as I and those of the other supporters in Merced were able to work with Madera County to help them come to that place as well. I would have been willing to work with you and work with some of the folks in your area to find some compromise. Makes it very difficult now. But my point being that there are other places in the state that do want the system to go forward. There are other people who may not be here today because they're spending 2 and 3 hours each way every day just to get to work. They don't have time to fight the train or come and support the train because they're busy in the car all day long. I hope you'll take that to heart.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Any other comments or questions? Senator Gaines?
I just want to thank the Senator for bringing the legislation forward because for many reasons. I appreciate the Sierra Club coming forward, but when we take a look at the air quality issue, it's going to take 70 years to mitigate the air pollution created by the construction of high-speed rail. And so I don't know why we'd be using AB 32 money in order to construct this. Number two, I think that we did a disservice to the voters of California in making an assessment in terms of the cost of the project at $33 billion when We're hearing that it's being discussed that it's going to cost $68 billion, and that's not the end of the train. I mean, this cost is going to continue to increase and escalate, and I think you could be closer to the figures that you used in your testimony. So I want to thank you for bringing this forward and like to make a motion of support.
Okay. Would you like to close?
Sure. I request that we give the people the right to vote on this project, and we provide that opportunity today by voting for SB 901.
Thank you, sir.
Ask for your aye vote.
All right. And although I share some of the concerns on this project, I am going to vote no on it. Probably Catherine Phillips said my position about as concisely as possible at this point. So with that, I will ask the Secretary to call the roll.
The motion is do pass and re-refer to the Committee on Governance and Finance. Senators Desaulniers?
No.
Desaulniers, no. Gaines? Aye. Gaines, aye. Bell? Canella? Galgiani?
No.
Galgiani, no. Wesso? Lara?
No.
Lara, no. Liu? Pavley? Roth? Wyland?
Right now, that vote is 1-3. We'll leave it on call for the absent members. And as we go through the rest of your bills, Senator, I'd like to sort of move this along, although this has been a very important subject. So how many witnesses do you have in support of the next three bills? Two piece? Okay. If we can keep their comments to 2 minutes or less, that would be helpful. And I'll hold the opponents to the same amount, and then anyone after that, just name and affiliation, either in support or opposed. Go ahead.
Chairman, members, I present to you Senate Bill 902, which will ensure that property owners in the path of high-speed rail are fairly compensated for any property seized through eminent domain. Under current law, the government must provide a property owner with only the fair market value of the property seized through eminent domain. This fair market value approach does not take into consideration any liens against the property for investments already made in the land, or even to look if the homeowner is currently underwater on their home. There are numerous properties all over the state that have not still recovered from pre-recession value. A large number of these properties are in the path of the high-speed rail in the Valley, as well as both in Los Angeles and the Bay Area. In the instance that high-speed rail buys a property that is still underwater, it is possible that a homeowner or landowner could still be responsible for the balance on their mortgage for a home that they no longer own. Senate Bill 902 requires the state to provide property owner with either fair market value of the property or the amount of money necessary to discharge all liens on the property, whichever is greater. It is important to note that this would be only for secured liens, which are mortgages or loans taken out for physical improvements to their home or property. This will ensure that previous property owners are not held legally and fiscally responsible for any debt associated with the property they no longer legally own. With me today are my same folks here. We've got Michael Corbett from Kings County and Frank Oliveira.
Frank Oliveira, Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability. Okay, as you all know, there's much controversy surrounding the California High-Speed Train project, controversy surrounding its funding, its design, its future operations, and its construction through our communities. In Fresno County, property owners within the project right-of-way are experiencing abusively low land acquisition offers. The additional safeguards that SB 902 brings are necessary to protect property owners. The California High-Speed Rail Authority has demonstrated that they cannot be expected to minimize the adverse impacts of the project on their own. Do the right thing and give those affected by this project some peace of mind that they'll be treated fairly by the great state of California. These safeguards are common sense, fair, and should be carried forward. I urge an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Oliveira. Mr. Corbett.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Michael Corbett, representing the Kings County Board of Supervisors. We see this bill as fundamentally about fundamental fairness. It's a bill about equity. It makes no sense whatsoever for the state of California, through eminent domain or any other means, to get property from a property owner and have that property owner be in debt as a result of that action. For those reasons, we support this bill.
Thank you. Mr. Wolf, name and affiliation, please.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members, David Wolf, Howard Jarvis, Taxpayers Association, we're in support.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? See anyone coming forward? Questions or comments? Senator, would you like to finish?
You betcha. I request that we protect homeowners and property owners from potentially having to pay for property that they no longer own. I ask for your aye vote.
Okay. Is there a motion? Moved by Senator Gaines. We'll go ahead and ask the Secretary to call the roll, please.
The motion is due pass and re-refer to the Committee on Judiciary. Senators Desaulniers?
No.
Desaulniers, no. Gaines? Gaines, aye. Bell? Canella? Galgiani? Wesso? Lara? Liu? Pavley? Roth? Wyland?
All right, that vote right now is 1-1. Obviously, we'll leave that on call. We'll take you to your third bill, SB 903.
Mr. Chair and members, I present to you today Senate Bill 903, which would require High-Speed Rail Authority to pay the county annually the amount equal to the property taxes lost due to acquisition from property of High-Speed Rail. Properties are homes, farms, and businesses, all of which pay local property taxes. Lands acquired by High-Speed Rail through purchase or eminent domain would not be required to pay property taxes. Local governments rely on the collection of property taxes to fund vital services such as police, fire, and education. As a result, communities and local governments in the Central Valley and later in Los Angeles and the Bay Area will suffer great financial loss because of lost property taxes. For example, it is currently estimated that the proposed high-speed rail route from Madera to Fresno, which is only about 30 miles, will go through 221 privately owned land parcels. According to the assessor's office, in both Fresno and Madera County, these 221 properties generate about $1.7 million in yearly property tax revenues. This number will only increase as the project moves towards Los Angeles and the Bay Area. Prop 1A of 2008 authorized $9.95 billion in general obligation funds for development and acquisition of real property. The authority has the funding to not only acquire properties, but also to compensate counties for lost revenue. Local governments affected by the implementation of high-speed rail should not have to lose the ability to appropriately fund necessary public services. This bill will ensure that the counties will not have to lose out on revenue for necessary services because of this project. With me today is Kings County Supervisor Richard Valley from Kings County, and Frank Oliveira from Citizens of California High-Speed Rail Accountability.
Supervisor, would you like to begin?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. Richard Valley, representing Kings County Board of Supervisors. I appear in support of SB 903, which our board voted unanimously to sponsor and support on March 18th. Members of the committee, simply put, Kings County cannot afford to lose tax revenue. It's already greatly impacted from the Great Recession, the 3-year-plus drought, and high unemployment. We are an ag-based economy. Taking land also means taking the related crop, which is part of the overall assessment and impacts ultimate productivity, which feeds the state, the nation, and the world. Using the authority preferred eastern alignment through Kings County would result in lost revenue of approximately $450,000, or 1.4% of the county's annual receipt of current secured property tax revenues. This is on top of the already lost revenue when the state ceased paying open space subvention as part of the Williamson Act program. That was a loss of over $2.5 million annually. Kings County can afford that, let alone continue to pile on the loss of revenue resulting from high-speed rail. Thank you, and I urge your support of SB 903.
Thank you, Supervisor. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your testimony. Mr. Oliveira?
Frank Oliveira, Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability. We urge an aye vote in support of Senate Bill 903. California High-Speed Train Project will obviously acquire land to use in its right-of-way and accompanying infrastructure such as overpasses. Thousands of acres will be taken off the property tax rolls of every county that this project touches. Many affected counties have small operating budgets in these challenging financial times. They will be severely affected by the loss of those property tax revenues. Counties outside the right-of-way will not lose property tax revenues. SB 903 is common sense fairness for the affected counties, fairness that will allow them to continue to provide basic services to their jurisdictions. Do the right thing and give county governments that will be affected by this project some peace of mind that they will be treated fairly by the state of California. SB 903 safeguards are common sense, fair, and should be carried forward into law. I urge an aye vote.
Okay. Other witnesses in support?
Mr. Chairman, members, David Wolf of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. We're in support.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Are there witnesses in opposition to this bill? See no one coming forward. Any questions, comments, a motion? Okay. Senator Gaines moves the bill to do pass to appropriations. Sorry, I won't be able to support it. I'm sure that comes as no surprise. I'm a little concerned, in addition to other things, that this is without precedent according to the Department of Finance and the LAO. And, of course, there are a lot of local governments who would like public projects. I can understand King County not wanting this one. So with that, we'll ask the Secretary to call the roll.
Motion is due pass and re-refer to the Committee on Appropriations. Senators Desaulniers?
No.
Desaulniers, no. Gaines?
Aye.
Gaines, aye. Bell? Canella? Galgiani? Wesso? Lara? Liu? Pavley? Roth? Wyland.
All right. That bill is 1-1, and we'll stay on call. And we'll go to the last item, item number 4, SB 904. And I do want to let the audience know that we're particularly busy right today with bills in other committees. I know I'm on another committee right now on Human Services, so members come and go, and that's unfortunate, but we are busy today. So, Senator Vidic, your last item.
Yes, Chairman, members. I present to you today Senate Bill 904, which would require individuals working for the High-Speed Rail Authority to obtain consent of the landowner and identify themselves as working on behalf of High-Speed Rail Authority. I'm going to say this, part of it is because we're not working within existing corridors, and so this thing cuts through people's property. And if you got somebody in the middle of your property, you're wondering what's going on. And so landowners are encountering individuals working on their property without their permission. In addition, these individuals do not identify themselves when asked, only responding as part of their employment. They cannot state who they are or who they work for. Under current law, land surveyors working on behalf of High-Speed Rail Authority do not have to ask permission to enter a property beforehand or identify who they are working for. This can be very unnerving to landowners in my district who like to have an idea who's on their property and why they're there. There are many instances in where an individual coming onto agricultural land unannounced can cause threat of food safety. There could be an introduction of contamination. There could be foreign diseases to agriculture and animals. Also, the safety of the land surveyor needs to be taken into consideration since the landowner may not know the surveyor is on the land when a pesticide has been or may be applied. Senate Bill 904 will protect property owners from requiring employees from working for or on behalf of the High-Speed Rail Authority to first identify themselves and obtain permission from the landowner before operating on their land. With me again is Supervisor Valley and the guest.
Mr. Oliveira, how could we forget? Supervisor, would you like to begin?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Once again, Richard Valley representing Kings County. Members of the board, Kings County residents will continue to be engaged in the high-speed rail process. However, there have been far too many instances where property owners have not been given prior warning regarding decisions made in advance regarding their property. This bill would open up a line of communication, and in the case of Kings County, a safety measure. What I mean by safety measure, the eastern preferred alignment of high-speed rail for the city of Corcoran. This is rural areas. This is an area where Highway 43 cuts through, where currently the city of Corcoran hosts 2 prisons. And on this alignment, there are already signs on Highway 43 that warn drivers to not stop, do not pick up hitchhikers due to inmates, possible inmates in the area with the 2 facilities there. These are large rural areas, country areas, where you would want to identify yourself. These aren't the gas man coming to check your meter type neighborhoods. This legislation would help restore balance and most of all faith. Balance in the sense that property owners would be notified, and faith that legislators like yourselves understand and want to help. Urge your aye vote. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Supervisor. Mr. Oliveira.
Frank Oliveira, Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability. We urge your aye vote on this, on SB 904. As I've already pointed out, the high-speed train project will acquire land. Thousands of acres will be needed for the project. Thousands of acres of land that are personally owned by the citizens of this state. Land that they live on, work on, and enjoy. Land that is their space, bought and paid for with their toil and sweat. There are numerous examples already of persons claiming to be associated with the project being discovered by landowners on their private properties without notice. Landowners that have engaged these intruders have found the intruders to be rude and disrespectful on many occasions. These intruders are representatives of our state government, the same state government that you represent. Taking a person's property for public use is a harsh process. Having strangers, sometimes rude strangers, just invading someone's personal space without due process is just wrong. Would you accept that it's okay for a stranger to show up in your backyard unannounced and claiming to have some sort of authority over the property that you still own? What if they told you that you no longer had any say in what happens on your property before you receive your due process? SB 904 simply ensures that those who are involved in the project respect property owners as they are performing their official duties. 904's safeguards are common sense and fair, should be carried forward into law, and I urge an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Oliveira. I appreciate your brevity. Other witnesses in support?
My name is Karen Stout, and I am a private property owner in Kings County, and I feel I have the right to know who is on my property, and when they appear there, that they announce themselves and introduce themselves. I am for an aye vote for all 4 of Senator Vidak's proposed bills.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes.
Ron Jones, a farm owner in the region, but not directly involved with high-speed rail. But I have become very familiar not only with the group in Hanford, but also Madera, the Preserve Our Heritage. And when I first got involved with this program and this issue, I came in contact with 2 of probably the most respected and well-known people in the region. And both of them came to me and said the same thing. They said they had never in all their lives been so rudely treated and so disrespected by a public entity as they were in this. And they've been dealt with public entities all their lives. They're a lot older than I am. So I realized at the beginning this issue and this problem was there, and I know they've worked very hard at that. But all the things you're talking about here happen every day out there. And we worry about our workers. We worry about all these other things and pesticides and everything we're doing. And you're not even protecting the people that are state employees with this. That's negligent. And I just think you folks, even though I know you're going through these bills in a political manner, should consider this as something that's personal, individual, and needs your attention. So I appreciate your consideration. I appreciate the Senator bringing it up today.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members, just briefly, David Wolf with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. We're in support of the bill. If you conduct work on private property, you need the permission of the landowner. To do otherwise is trespassing. That's what it's called, and it is illegal. Would ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Are there any witnesses in opposition? Can I ask, is there someone here from High Speed Rail? I just have a question. Maybe you could come forward. And do we have a witness in opposition? You can get that chair, Ralph. I know you can.
Mr. Chairman and members, Ralph Simone representing the California Land Surveyors Association. Our position is technically opposed unless amended, and our testimony is much less to high-speed rail and whatever, but really going against the grain of existing statute. Both the existing provisions of the Civil Code and the Penal Code do exempt licensed land surveyors who are on the property performing their official duties. And the Civil Code provision reads, the right of entry upon or to real property to investigate and utilize boundary evidence and to perform surveys is a right of persons legally authorized to practice land surveying. It goes on to say, in response to something Senator Vidak mentioned, that the owner or tenant shall be notified of the proposed time of entry where practicable. So it is not, at least as to survey work, be it from a private sector surveyor or a public surveyor, something that is wanton or abused on the property. Furthermore, the Penal Code actually provides an exemption for trespass in terms of somebody performing their official duties. And in our concern is this undermines the long-standing provisions of the Civil and Penal Code, and today it may be the high-speed rail project, tomorrow it may be freeway extension, the next year it may be water conveyance system. So we oppose, unless it's amended, to exclude the legitimate practice of land surveying. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simonian. So for high-speed rail, that was my question, is you do notice people before you go on their property, I assume, consistent with the code that Mr. Simonian just mentioned. And if you could answer any of the questions about how the property owners perceive your surveyors when they go on that property, the issues of rudeness.
Okay, and I can't address this. I'm Don Grebe. I'm the Director of Real Property for High Speed Rail Authority. And I know that we have recently contracted with right-of-way land surveyors for a continuing work on one segment of the Rail Authority. And as part of that contract, they are required to send out a notice. I have an example of not only a letter that they provide, but also in advance, a letter in, say, 10 days before they go out on the property. And also, if there's no one home, they have a door hanger with information as well, indicating their presence, also identifying that. I mean, let me just read a section of that notice. In doing the act of surveying out there, in doing so, we are asked to be courteous and perform our job without doing damage to your property. Please be aware that we may need to enter upon your property several times in the process of our survey. The guidance is to be professional and to be courteous. And I can't explain, I don't know exactly what the circumstances under which the prior property owner was contacted or the nature of the conversation that went on there. But I know that in going forward, and again, I've just relet the contracts on this process, that the survey teams going out there are very much cognizant of the fact that they need to treat property owners with respect and also the property rights out there. So where possible, we make contact, we leave door hangers, they provide advance notice when they're going to be in the area.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any, Senator Gaines, had to stop and think for a second. Everybody's left us.
That's right. If I could just ask for some clarification in terms of the process. So if the surveyors come in to a community, they'll put a door hanger on, if there's a structure on every property that's impacted.
Correct.
They knock on the door.
Well, yeah, for residences specifically. Obviously for barns they probably would not, but for residences, commercial properties, industrial properties.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
That's the practice.
How about the vehicles? Are the vehicles identified? Is there? I mean, can you clearly tell if I was a farmer and I was coming up upon a pickup truck and a couple folks working on my property, would I be able to identify that they're surveyors?
They will carry identification on their person. They'll probably be wearing, neon-colored vests and the typical equipment that they have, hard hats, et cetera, for going out there and doing their survey work. The vehicles, I think to the extent possible that they'll be in their company vehicles out there. Again, these are right-of-way private consulting, right-of-way engineering land survey firms, so they'll have identification on those vehicles as well.
Okay. I've got real concerns. I think it's very important you do everything you can in terms of notification. I support the legislation because I think, from my vantage point, it's a private property rights issue, and that there ought to be certain identification and notification of that property owner prior to going on to the property. And I mean, there's problems in ag communities throughout the state, and I hear it from my brother: crops being stolen, diesel being stolen, equipment being stolen, and sometimes you can't, if they're not clearly identified, you don't know if it's friend or foe on your property. So, thank you. I'd like to make a motion if I could.
So the motion by Senator Gaines is due pass to judiciary would be the next stop. And I think you've heard both Senator Gaines and I would agree with him. Although I don't support the bill, I do support the spirit that you're obeying by the current law, you're noticing, and it's certainly in the best interest for high-speed rail and your contractor to make sure that it goes smoothly. So I hope that I will hear that in the future. Senator Vidic, would you like to close?
I request that we protect property owners and respect their property rights. I ask for an aye vote.
Okay. We'll ask the Secretary to call the roll. The motion is due pass to judiciary.
Senators Desaulniers?
No.
Desaulniers, no. Gaines?
Aye.
Gaines, aye. Bell? Canella? Galgiani? Wesso? Lara? Liu? Pavley? Roth? Wyland?
All right, it's the same result as of the previous two, so we'll leave that on call, obviously, for members to come back and vote on it. Thank you, Senator.
May we have reconsideration?
If it fails,
If it fails.
yes, we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you for helping us facilitate the hearing. Senator Monning, you have a